Right. Oyeyemi Ajayi, thank you. And indeed, our guests are all ready for us to begin our conversation. And on a lighter note, just before we came on air, I did describe all of them really as founding members of Good Morning Nigeria. They've been with us right from day one, and today, as we end 2024, they are also here. So I'm proud to welcome to Good Morning Nigeria Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, who's Dean School of Postgraduate Studies, based University here in Abuja. Thank you very much for joining us on this last day of 2024.
Thank you.
Yes, and also here with us is in his, of course, I don't know how to describe his heart. It's the Niger Delta heart. Public affairs analyst. He's also here with us today. Good to have you with us.
It's a pleasure.
That's the oil heart.
Yeah, well, we are one Nigeria.
Nigeria.
All right. Also joining us for the conversation, but via Zoom, all the way from Saudi Arabia, is Kabir Mato, Professor of Political Science. Professor Mato, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigeria.
All right. Also with us for the conversation, but joining us from Benin is Dr. Osawa Okonzua, a public affairs analyst. Many thanks for joining us, Doctor.
Yeah.
Right. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much, and compliments of the season. And we're looking at major political events that shaped the year 2024. As we all know, election, they say, of course, is a very integral part of our democracy. In fact, it is the pivot around which democracy revolves. But over the years, both the elections and the electoral process, have been, devoid of fundamental democratic principles, if you ask me. I mean, over and over, we've had calls to, pinpoint areas, within our system, that needs to be, rejigged or amended or, reversed. So I would like to start by, outlining some of those major political events from your perspective, Professor Adeniyi, that shaped 2024.
Okay, thank you very much. But if my memory serves me right, today is my birthday.
Yeah.
And of course, being the last day of the year,
and you're on Good Morning Nigeria.
Yeah, Good Morning Nigeria. So
we must celebrate.
It's a good time for me to look back and make projections forward, not just at the personal level, but also at
Congratulations,
the
by the way.
Thank you very much. And economic levels, as the case could be. 2024 is an interesting year, but nothing extraordinary, because when we're talking about periodization, we're only comfortable with the Gregorian calendar. There are other calendars, that other religions, other sections of the world also use, but of course, we are comfortable with the Gregorian, and of course, whatever happens transpires within that box. We like to be critical about it so that we can make rightful projections into the future. I agree, there have been some occurrences. We had 2 state elections. We had a cabinet shake-up, and of course, 2025 is also another year, another box through which we are highly expectant, because it's going to be the last year of active governance, before we move into an election in 2027, as the case could be. But again, we need to understand that when we're talking about reviews like this, some things are actually predictable and some are actually not unpredictable. The predictable ones are actually the ones that are on the INEC agenda, the elections.
The reruns and the
absolutely the obstacle election. In 2025, we're expecting the Anambra election as well. But the story has never really changed about the things that we want to have improved upon in our electioneering process. It's just been a cycle of repeated violence, monetization, transactional politics, having money and more money, controversy around judiciary, tribunalization of electoral processes, the inability of politicians or contestants to be magnanimous in victory and to be gallant in defeat, So the problem around the electoral process still remains largely attitudinal. And that's why INEC is trying every year to ramp up technology. I remember I had a chairman the other day even thinking about some other kind of modification. Now we can continue these modifications, to technology, trying to make sure that human elements, human involvement in the process is minimized, so that they cannot be able to affect it. We can continue to do these things forever, but if the attitudinal element, is not, if attention is not paid to it, we'll probably continue to run in circles. And every time too we talk about mobilization, political education before election, INEC does this very well. Huge budgets are often allocated for it. We know. We also expect political parties to do it. To some extent, they do it if it's going to favor them. But then all these things happen pre-election. But in the period of election, we'll still see a manifestation of the ease that we've been talking about. So it looks as if, it's all movements, all motion and no movement.
Okay, I think we'll just allow you to pause that.
Okay.
All right. Many thanks, Professor Adeniyi, for your opening comments. So I'd like to get to Jide Ojo now. I would like to hear his own thoughts about 2024 and the political events for you that were, great that we should talk about.
Thank you, Larry. For me, the events that shaped 2024, in my own opinion, majorly at the subnational level. And if I'm to calibrate that, I would say at the local government level. We have raft of local government elections that is laughing, that are laughable. But let's start from the July 11 Supreme Court decision on local government autonomy. That was a landmark decision. That was, for me, the most celebrated event of 2024. Because when you look at the way local governance system have been caged, it was a liberalization, a liberation of sort for local government. I learned the moratorium period is over. By next January, local government will start having their funds directly. That's good news. I went to a primary school in Ibadan that was established by local government. ICC, Mokola Ibadan. That was my primary school. But today, which local government or area council have established a new set of schools in the last 2 decades? The existing one, how are they funding it? So you have that liberation on July 11. We should celebrate that. Maybe we make it a local government day in Nigeria. But let's come to look at the quality of local government elections. There are over 20 elections were held at the local government in 2024. With 2 that seems to be out of the norm, but which drew attention to political sagacity of gladiators. And I will cite Rivers and Abia. In these 2 states, as against the grain of, as against the popular opinion that the party that governs the state wins all the local government seats. In Abia, it didn't happen that way. 17 local government, Zenith Labour Party won 15, Young People's Party, Young Progressive Party, I think, YPP, won 2. Meanwhile, they have a governor who is from Labour Party. What happened? Political gerrymandering, political disaffection within the Labour Party, spilling, and that tells you a story. Is there a possibility of a defection of Alex Otti in 2025? It's not impossible, given what happened with that local government elections. Because if, as a sitting governor, you can cede the elections of your local government to another party, that is perhaps an anti-party that, if Labour Party were to be strong, should have queried him, how did this happen? But can they? Then you go to Rivers State very quickly, you saw how another party won almost all the seats, I think, except 2. And then the ruling party, which is the PDP in the state, lost. So you now saw that in every other state, Kaduna and all other states, the ruling party won all the seats. In Benue, and the Benue one was very tragic for me as a political watcher. You have a Benue that has about 23 local governments. One of the senatorial districts is represented by PDP in the National Assembly, and you conducted a local government election in which PDP did not win a councillorship seat. And yet the party to produce a senator. How did that happen? What was the quality of the elections? Can we interrogate that in 2025, with this local government autonomy, we are going to see vibrant, competitive, and credible elections? Because without that, without credible local government elections, if we continue with this selection and coronation that we call elections and local government, it just then means that you are going to be handing over the resources of the local government to cronies of the governors, who will now manage it as the governors wish.
Okay, Jidejo, thank you. Thank you for the perspectives that you have brought to the conversation, and I like the two divergent perspectives. Professor Adeniyi says nothing extraordinary, and of course he's mentioned the same old issues, problem. It says is centered, on attitudinal or attitude of Nigerians and all that. But Professor Mato, you're joining us via Zoom from Saudi Arabia. I would like you to also weigh in our conversation. What's your own perspective? Professor Adeniyi is saying nothing extraordinary, about the political scene, really, that it's all the same, more movement or motion, but no motion but no movement, so it's all the same cup of tea that we're experiencing. But Jide has brought in another perspective, like the July 11 landmark Supreme Court decision on local government autonomy, and of course raise some other issues. But what is your own perspective to this conversation?
Well, thank you very much. And once again, good morning, Nigeria. I think, I like to tilt a little more, the professor who said that, there is nothing so fundamental, that has taken place in 2024. But I want to compartmentalize, my understanding of the year 2024 in 3 major perspectives. One, economic perspective as having a very serious impact on the political development in the country, as well as from the legal point of view, and also thirdly from the political dimension. The economic dimension has to do with the fact that political activities in 2024 were mainly affected by the economic decisions taken by the administration of Bola Tinubu beginning perhaps May 2023. And that has to do with the removal of fuel subsidy, the floating of the Naira, to some extent the commissioning of the Dangote refinery and the apparent repairs that we were both Port Harcourt and Warri refineries. These are very huge, in my view, economic decisions that have impacted, on the political well-being of Nigerians in the year 2024. The efficacy or otherwise of these decisions is, not reeled out for discussion now, but I think they are very fundamental. Now, from the legal perspective, Jido was talking about the landmark ruling by the Supreme Court, which I've always seen as unconstitutional. The attempt by the federal government to go to Supreme Court and secure, a judgment that is purely against an express provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It's also another major milestone in the year 2024. Again, that's a matter of debate. We often say that whatever is decided by Supreme Court, is final. The balance is left with God to decide. But in this case, as a matter of political intercourse, I believe that it will be discussed and recalibrated time and again. And then, of course, the third and very important, attainment in 2024 stems from the political dimension, which have to do with so many. To me, cabinet reject is not any political achievement. It's what is expected. It's unfortunate that in the Nigerian political climate since the beginning of 2015, the coming of the Buhari administration, governments do not seem to check the performance of their appointees as a measure of determinism of whether to continue in office or not. And this seems to be also the rule in the Tinubu administration. Political officers are not judged, are not determined by the level of their performances or otherwise factors of their continuity, or change in office. So to me, that's not an achievement. But then what, again, it's very important is the seeming crisis, in states. The one in Rivers is just one that reared its ugly head, probably because Wilson Wike is the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, and he makes a lot of noise in Abuja against the young man he instituted in Port Harcourt. There are many other states also where you have succession crisis, and of course, even if managed relatively better than what is happening. Yes, it's another major, political development in the landscape of Nigeria in the year 2024. Then, of course, the elections in Edo and Ondo State, defined variously by different individuals on the basis of their perceptions and understanding, of what happened. But then finally is the allegation by the leader of the military junta in the Nigeria Republic, against certain senior principal of government in Nigeria and, of course, the president of Nigeria, regarding the level of insecurity or otherwise, afflicting the nation as a whole. So in my view, the nation in 2024 faced three major compartmental issues. One, from the economic dimension, which has continued to affect, the political well-being in the country. The second, of course, is the legal, which seems to be the new definition of the Nigerian judicial system. Thereby, yes, of course, the decisions of the court to decide who won elections, who were. And I think that's one area that Nigerians really need to be very, very, serious about, where millions of people will go and cast their vote on the day of election, only to wait for a panel of 3 or 4 judges and justices in, a court of law to decide for the people. I think is unhealthy, is undemocratic, and is one of the major issues of contention that I think we need to debate in 2025 going forward.
Many thanks, Professor Mato. So many points you have made there. Of course, as we continue the conversation, we'll look at some of these issues. But let's get to Benin now and find out if Dr. Konzua thinks that, the political space in 2024 was extraordinary, especially because you are in Edo State where there was an election and the ruling party, before the election, lost the election. So, Dr. Konzua, what are your thoughts about 2024 as a political year in Nigeria?
Well, I couldn't agree more with our compatriots who have commented on these issues so far from the economic, social, and political perspectives. But talking about Edo, one can easily say there was a lot of apprehension before the election, and the apprehension ultimately was dispersed, because we have always felt Edo is an enlightened state. No matter the fears people have about us, Edo will continuously be a kind of good laboratory for the other parts of the country to learn from. The elections did hold. Of course, there were controversies that the electoral umpire was tilted to one side or the other. The issues before the court now, and the government is in place. Let's see how things will roll forward. And our neighboring state too also held his own election. The governor has got a new mandate, maybe be sworn in a short while, in the other side of the year, and so on. So for us, I think we did better than before. In terms of, for me, what appealed to me more was that in the previous elections, there were casualties, if that's the right word to use. Nobody's supposed to die in the course of an election. But in this very last one, there was zero mortality, which was, I think, kind of advanced. Apart from all other things people complained about, the fact that nobody died this one, I think it's a good thing to talk about, and it's a thing for other people to emulate, that elections should not be reduced to a kind of war. Just go and select who your leader should be. So that sort of extent, I think it was a good outing for us in Edo.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kenswa. I'm glad we've been able to feel the pulse of everyone, of course, involved in this conversation about the events, political events that shaped 2024, and the bottom line is that there's still, the room for improvement is still wide open. The room for credible election is still wide open. And to borrow from Professor Mato's compartmentalization, but I will change the economic, the first one, to bureaucracy. So I will now say, let us begin to look at the stakeholders that man the three different compartments that you have created. So in place of economy, I'll say bureaucracy, legal, and then, the political parties themselves, or the political dispensation. So let's see how they have played, or the role each and every stakeholder, within the electoral process have played, to bring us where we are. And again, let me start with Professor Adeniyi. Let's begin with INEC, for instance. If I remember correctly, it was Kofi Annan that said that, when the electorate believes that an election is credible, that is a catalyst for greater security, it's for good governance and all that. But when credible election is absent, then the electorate will have no recourse to peaceful political change. So what role, or how would you assess the role played by INEC as a major stakeholder in the electoral process in 2024?
Okay, interesting. I think it's the late Justice Apata, as INEC chairman, because I remember I was a correspondent for The Guardian, covering INEC then, who said that the first time he was made chairman of INEC, that he rejected it, but his people came around it. And the reason why he rejected the position was that, when he was offered, was that he saw INEC as a graveyard of reputations. That heading INEC, will be the graveyard of my reputation, meaning that there's nothing I do that will satisfy Nigerians, especially a difficult, politically charged country like ours, where electoral process can be very...
You can also mean another thing.
Yeah.
You also have a different meaning.
That's fine. Yeah, it can be very emotive, So, having said that, it can be a very difficult task managing INEC, and that's why we often see controversy, because electionary process in this country is very, very vociferous, always very trenchantly contested, in ways in which most of the time, when losers, are announced, they are not, 99% of the time, they are not likely to agree. They are likely to resort to court. So try as anybody there, might have done, the outcome is going to be met with challenges, So again, that also asks that whoever is going to be there must prioritize credibility and integrity and openness. In the last election, we saw, the preparations in the pre-election stage, all they were trying to do just to make sure that it was transparent, credible, free, and fair, as we always say. But what did we get eventually? Controversy, because there was a so-called glitch, And I thought that could have been remedied if there was enough communication. You might accuse me of privileging communication as a communications person, because I just believe that, it can always be an oxygen for good governance, an oxygen for the smooth administration of processes. And communication shouldn't just be on need-to-know basis. Sometimes you can release it as much as possible, information, so that if you don't release it, create suspicion. And that was the only thing, largely, that you see opposition or those who were announced as losers picked upon even until tomorrow. The election was coming out, the result was going in a particular direction, and suddenly you announced a glitch, and because of that glitch, even though the election, no matter how credible the election appeared to be with the reuse of beavers and this other technology, the fact that there was that glitch, and the information around it was not properly managed, did a lot of damage.
But
to
there was
the
a
commission.
glitch. Should that rub off on the credibility of his system?
And that's the point I'm
If there's
saying. I'm saying that it doesn't. The technology was okay. That's fine.
Yes.
We know, but I'm saying that the management of the information, was problematic. Was not enough. There were lacunas. There were rumors already going on. There were doubts already flying from one place to the other. Then it was at a later time, when the damage was already done, that we saw just one press statement. One, but with every due respect, press statement that came at a particular point in time when the damage was already done, and there were no other communication around it again. So we now left, naysayers, to control the narrative, and it became very difficult thereafter to repair the damage, irrespective of the credibility that actually attended the electioneering process.
Right.
Now, going forward, I'm just saying, going forward, it shouldn't just be about the election proper. There are other angles to an election that we need to pay attention to, and that's why we say election is a multi-stakeholder affair. It's not just for INEC, security is also involved, and there are some other elements in the process, that you need to take charge of.
Yes, I said we are taking each of the stakeholders,
yes,
and see where they, where they fault.
Well, thanks, Professor Adeniyi. I'm trying to, put the glitch you're talking about, and I think that should be the 2023 general elections.
Yes.
But this, the focus is 2024, and looking at the two major elections, the state elections, a lot of people, analysts, I'm sure Jidojo will agree, have said that maybe INEC did fairly better than the 2023 general elections, maybe because it was an all-cycle election, they had to deal with just one state. I mean, we saw beavers working in most of the polling units in the two states where elections held. We saw election results uploaded in IREV. I remember for Edo, over 90% of the results and all of that. But, maybe you want to add to what he has said about INEC, but I think that maybe we should talk about the political parties. A number of times, having political analysts like you come on the program, the focus is always what the political parties are not doing right and how it can shape our political space. So I'd like you to tell us, for 2024, looking at these two states, Edo and Ondo, how the political parties, displayed, how they performed and all of that before the election, and all of that. Tell us, are our political parties leading us in the right path? Are we actually headed for doom or gloom in our political space with the way the political parties are going?
I just believe that even though people will say, oh, don't go back there, don't talk about military hangover and takeover and all of that, but we can't talk about the stunted growth of our political party system without talking of that 29 years of military interregnum in our political space between 1960 and now. And unfortunately, our political class have not learned the right lessons, and they are falling short. In fact, I put the bulk of the blame with our governance system on the political party gladiators, particularly the dominant parties. They have not pulled their weight as is expected. And you could see that even in this outgoing year, they are bogged down by leadership crisis. Is it PDP you want to talk about, or Labour Party? Just had this leadership crisis rested by the Supreme Court decision just barely 3-4 weeks ago. ABGA has been in crisis about who truly is the leader, the chairman of ABGA. Then you go to NNPP. NNPP has two factions as of today. The Kwakwaso faction, is it Anebo, who actually originally established the party. So you now find out that because of the internal wranglings within the political parties, particularly the opposition parties, they have not been able to form a strong, vibrant political watcher of the ruling party. So you find also that much of what they accuse the ruling party of doing, do in their respective areas where they control levers of power. Let me put use Edo and Ondo as cases in point. I was live in Edo for the September 21 elections. And part of what I saw, you have, I've forgotten how many political parties fielded candidates. But did you know that barely a week to that election, about 5 of those candidates addressed press conference and said they are stepping down for the candidate of the ruling party? And you ask yourself, the law says you cannot step down once it's 45 days to election. So where, if not that you have been compromised one way or the other, why would you step down when you know you cannot go the whole org? So you see that all this issue of vote buying is not limited to the ruling party. It's just the purchasing power of each of them. So this one gives 20,000, this one says I can only give 5,000. And you now find out that in their own respective strongholds, where they can also, in fact, one thing I think we need to flag with 2023 and 2024 was the traction that misinformation and disinformation is gaining in our political process. You see political gladiators using a lot of fake news, misinformation, and disinformation to demarket themselves when it comes to political contestations. And I think it's a worrying, it's peculiar to Nigeria because it also happened in US elections. I don't know whether many of you followed it. I followed US election closely from the time that Kamala Harris emerged, and I followed it through to the night of the election itself. And I saw how they deployed a lot of disinformation, a lot of hate speeches, So it's not peculiar to Nigeria, but I think what we need to learn is that this issue of resolving our leadership crisis within the party, political party, is very important if we are going to move forward in 2025. 2, we need to also not just be rule-based, but rule-obedient. We have so many rules. We have Electoral Act 2022 that has barely seen 2 years of implementation. Yet, we are running to amend it right now. INEC itself has come up with 142 recommendations of reforms, both legal, administrative, and otherwise, that it wants to see. And I was surprised when INEC started talking about now considering to having political party registration and regulatory commission. This was since 2008 that Justice Muhammad Lawal Ways Committee has recommended this. INEC has continually rejected that provision, only accepting the Electoral Offences Commission. Now, part of their reform is, we are now willing to allow this responsibility to be taken off us. Let there be an independent commission to register and regulate the activities of political parties. So, our political party process still needs to be reformed. But I agree with Prof to an extent that no matter the kind of legal and administrative reforms we do, without attitudinal reform, without ethical revolution, we are not going to make much progress.
Jide, thank you. Thank you. And again, I'd like to, take a cue from your earlier, statement about the quality of elections at the local government level. And you talked about that, and you also referenced the issue or the situation in Abia State, with the quality of elections. And that, relates to the credibility of the electoral process. And we know what happens to, credible elections if they are not credible. Of course, you will have a lot of electoral issues, disputes and litigations and all that. And Professor Mato, my question is to you. I'm just wondering what lessons were learned in 2024 about election disputes, credibility of elections, and then also apathy as a result of lack of transparency within the system.
Thank you very much, Claire. I think, apathy during elections is apparently a global phenomenon. It's not just limited to Nigeria in particular. Yes, under the democratic methods, you have the right to vote. You register as a voter, but if you don't vote, at the end of the day, you don't commit any crime per se. So voter apathy is understandable. And as to regard the sanctity of our electoral process, studies seems to that national elections are conducted fairer and more creditably than spot election. And this is visibly seen from what happened in Edo and what happened in Ondo State. No matter how clean, pure, how honest and transparent these elections were, they were beclouded with a lot of challenges and complaints from especially people who were not as lucky in the elections as those who became victorious. So that's part of it. We have challenges. The major challenge we have, like I did say in the beginning of the introduction, is the position of the judiciary as well as determination of electoral matters is concerned. It's becoming a very challenging issue where, like I said, millions of people will go on the day of election and cast their votes only for 3 or 4 panel of judges or justices to sit somewhere under a very precarious Nigerian situation and redefine, the wishes of the people. This is very serious, development and a very big minus to the Nigerian, democratic process, which of course we have to, where our thinking comes together with a view to seeing how we can deal with it, once and permanently. Now the entire, gamut of local government elections were conducted in 2024, in my view, something to completely determine. I'm aware that some members of the National Assembly were contemplating coming up with a bill to establish what they call a National Electoral Commission that would be charged with the responsibilities of conducting local government. Again, that is an infraction on the Nigerian Constitution, because the Constitution has clearly defined, you cannot approbate and reprobate at the same time. The Constitution assigns functions to both levels and organs of government. And so there is no one particular organ of government, or be it legislature, or executive, or judiciary, that can confer, the functions of either increase or reduce, by any way, the functions of any particular level of organ of government. So if we want to affect any major change in our, democratic process, I think it's only natural that we get back to the Constitution and find a way of, remodeling it. Jide was talking about, the role of the political parties. Jide, you recall in 2003, 2000, within IFS, we tried to, spearhead the establishment of what you today call the Inter-Party Advisory Council. When you were with IFS, and you remember the development even at that material time. The IPAC membership was mainly constituted by those smaller political parties. The PDP, the AAPP, and the rest of them were not attending the meeting. So we still do not have functional, credible political parties in this country. Both the APC and the PDP are caricatures of political parties. They don't operate as political parties. They are merely institutions and instruments in the hands of very few politically privileged individuals that continue to determine the pattern of activity within the Nigerian polity. And unless these political parties play the role that they are supposed to play in a democratic system, will continue to run round and around the cycles, and at the end of the day, will not be able to achieve meaningful election. Good democratic governance will also be an issue under contention, and confusion will continue to reign supreme within the Nigerian political scenario. So it's a lot of issues. I agree with the panel that attitudinal orientation, ethical reforms, and our desire to be our and play the game by the rules are the fundamental and important, steps that are to be taken in order for us to be able to achieve any meaningful, political development in Nigeria.
All right. Many thanks, Professor Mato. agree, with our two guests right here in the studio talking about, attitudinal reorientation. We've talked about INEC, we've talked about the political parties. Let's talk about the electorate. I mean, the people themselves in all of this, how they have shaped the political space in 2024. Let's not also forget that this year, 2024, marked 25 years of uninterrupted democratic rule in Nigeria. And when you talk about democracy, I think the definition we have is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I mean, it's just people that we get to see in that definition. So I'd like to get to Dr. Okonzua now. Tell us, the electorate, the people, how, has there been any improvement, in the past years? And, did you see that the political consciousness of the electorate is one that would, the political space a lot better? I'm asking that because, when Jido spoke about political parties, he talked about every political party involved in vote buying, and then you ask yourself, who collects the money? The electorate themselves. When there's a bad government or when something is not being done by a leader, what do the people do? So tell us, how did they shape the political space, the electorate? Do you think that things are headed in the right direction in their conduct, as determinants of how the political space goes?
To answer your question, my hunch would be yes. The level of consciousness has been elevated, but you still have a mixture of attitude, apathy, cynicism, and the rest of it. No doubt, it's going to be a mixture for a very long time to come. And that is the function of leadership, really. Although people also follow leadership does have its responsibility. But it's the leadership that creates the gradient. Nigeria may be a new country, but we are well advanced beyond half a century now. And my confidence is always a return to the old Western region under the leadership of Obafemi Awolowo. So we can't be talking about what our leaders do, what our followers do, and so on. We had very good examples in the First Republic. And even as we are today, you have residues of those attitudes in the western part of Nigeria. Their temper is generally progressive. They know what the government is for. On the average, they are ahead of their compatriots in what to demand of their government, what to expect, what to approve, what to reward, what to condemn, and so on. And that can actually spread to other parts of the country as well if the political parties, the people who lead our political parties will actually put their mind to it. Because it is they who generate what alternatives there are. Don't forget, in Nigeria, for the time being, we don't have independent candidacy. So it's actually the choices thrown up by the political parties that are available to people to choose from. Like the Edo election we're talking about now, we had 16 candidates the last time. And then at the end of the day, you had just two viable political parties competing for that election. It became a two-corner race. At the end of the day, the incumbent political party and the main challenger. So I think for me, my own attitude is let's take an evolutionary approach to our own politics. I do believe we will improve from time to time. The improvement may be imperceptible, but we are getting around it. Just like you have mentioned that we have observed 25 years of uninterrupted democracy, that is an achievement by itself. Because democracy is not supposed to be a very neat government. Democracy can be riotous, really, even in the advanced part of the world. But what is important is that the rules are kept, a mandate is conferred, and then it is hoped the mandate will be utilized in service of the people. And then when the mandate expires, it's going to be renewed or it's going to be terminated. I think on that, Nigeria is generally on course. We do hope our players will do what will serve the people's interests better and better. We do hope our leadership recruitment process will be improved. We do hope we will not be shy of coming into the arena, like the two professors who are with us on this program. I do hope they do have affiliations to political parties to advise the parties what their manifestos will be, what the people will definitely approve of during an election. Because at the end of the day, really, if you actually leave people to choose freely, I know people are talking about INEC and whether they are neutral or not. People are not that stupid. Nigerians are very smart. Coming back to what Obafemi Awolowo did in Western region, it was very, very clear. Even in Second Republic, when UPN came after the old action group, it was just enough to say you were affiliated to Obafemi Awolowo. At least in my own part of the country that time, a professor of pathology who was not known to be a political player, although he went to the Constituent Assembly in 1978, was elected governor just because he was from the Republic of Nigeria. And all the programs were very attractive to people. Who would not like son or daughter to be sent to school? Who would not like integrated rural development? Who would not like gainful employment and so on? So it is the function of our political parties, being the ruling elite, to make sure these issues are well distilled so that the people will have viable choices. And when those choices are made, that the political parties themselves and their leaders will have the good faith to implement these programs, even against all odds and challenges. I think that's where we are. So for me, let us take it a step at a time, and we do hope, if not this generation, the next one will get it better, and Nigeria will be governed democratically in perpetuity.
All right, Dr. Kenzwa, thank you. Let's again return to the studio here, and I'll start this time. I think I will start with Jideojo. So let's reverse, the cycle. I'll start with Jideojo, and I want us to look at the broader, issues driving our political, landscape. The electoral, process that you've all described as, moving but without motion, is changing but without visible change, and all that. And I'd like us to look at again the role of the judiciary. Professor Mato, talked about it, and let's look at the role of the judiciary vis-a-vis what is happening. Because it's still happening in Rivers State. We all, read, we saw and we heard about the, judgments and counter judgments, beginning with the speaker on Wike's side and, on the governor's side and all that. Is the judiciary complicit in the imbroglio that's going on, political imbroglio that's going on in Rivers?
The answer is outright yes, complicit, I would say. But don't also forget that I want to disagree with my Oga, Professor Mato. We've come a long way. We've worked together, consultants. We've done quite a lot of things together. But I disagree with his submission that the decision of 3, 4, 7 members of judicial panel on an election is tantamount to usurpation of the rights of the voters. I don't think it works that way. If the electoral management body has done its job well, votes will count. And don't let us forget that today is the instrumentality of judiciary that has brought about what we now celebrated as staggered election in Nigeria. 8 states where the judiciary have intervened to right the wrongs of the electoral management body. I don't think that should be condemnable. Because if not for judiciary, Adams Oshiomhole will not be governor in Edo. If not for the judiciary, John Kayode Fayemi will not be governor in Ekiti. If not for the judiciary, Aregbesola will not be governor in Osun. Because if you leave it to what INEC has declared, then it will have been final. So, globally accepted standard, there must be what is called election dispute resolution. And you cannot have everybody sitting as a jury to now determine you have 3 million voters. You now say, okay, let's go referendum. Who did you vote for? Who did you not vote for? Let's take a new count. So it's a globally accepted standard that when there is electoral dispute, in order for the state not to descend into anarchy, you ask the those who are aggrieved to go to court. Even though today, go to court has taken on a new
dimension.
Dimension. People now say, oh, after you have rigged me out, you're asking me to go to court. But
so is it to the credit of the judiciary that the crisis in Rivers is going on? Is it also to the credit of the judiciary that the judgment, Supreme Court judgment in Kanu, is also in favor of the NNPP?
Wait. You see, we need to put issues in context. Today, you are condemning judiciary. If not for the judiciary, will your sister, my sister, in Kogi Central, would she and Natasha Akpoti-Addo, would she have been a senator after she was rigged out by the APC in Kogi?
But it is also you analysts. It is also you political analysts that point out the impact of the judgments and counter judgments coming out from our judiciary.
Now calm down.
Yes.
Clear. Calm down.
Yeah,
clear.
yes.
The issue is this: judiciary has stages. The issue of Rivers, you find out that the state high court will give a judgment, a federal high court will give a counter judgment. State high court will give a judgment, federal high court will. So what happened? Both of them now went on to Court of Appeal. Now, has substantial justice not been done in Rivers by the Court of Appeal decision, which now say, look, federal high court, you heard by saying that local government election should not have been held in Rivers because it's a state affair. The Court of Appeal has made the necessary remedy, and that is why even the case of Kano that you talked about, and I will also add the case of Plateau, you understand, the Supreme Court was able to come in to rescue the situation, because for the fact that if it were to be, for instance, if it were to be before 2011, where all governorship election petition ends at the Court of Appeal, maybe the Yusuf will not be governor in Kano. Maybe Caleb Muftuang will not be governor in Plateau. But Supreme Court came in and said, no, what you did at the Court of Appeal and at the initial tribunal were wrong, and they made substantial corrections. So we should see judiciary in that light, that there are stages and appellate stages that you can go to seek further remedy. And I think Supreme Court has
you will have your say.
Better.
Yes, you will have your say. We just want to go on a short break. Please don't go away. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back in a moment.
Beautiful wives, ladies and mothers, are you ready?
Ever wondered why so many people are using Najiko tomato mix? Well, you too can grab a tin sachet.
All right, welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA, and it is the last episode for the year 2024. Our guests are still very much with us, and we're still talking about political developments in 2024. I'd like to get to Professor Adeniyi now. We are about rounding up this conversation. So, of course, we talked about all the issues in the political space and, all those who are involved in it. Well, maybe we should begin to set agenda as we look forward to 2025. I mean, we have an off-cycle election in 2025. That's Anambra, So, as we look forward to the new year, what are the changes you'd really like to see? First as a Nigerian, and then, of course, as a professor, and as a key political player, I should add that, in our political space, maybe you want to streamline it to that of the political parties. What you expect them to do differently in the coming year?
Okay, excellent. But first, let me just make a quick contribution to the earlier interesting conversation. I think Professor Mato's position, right, has actually earlier been echoed by former President Jonathan at a time when he said the judiciary should not be solely allowed to determine who governs us. And what they mean really is not to say that the intervention of the judiciary is discreditable. What I just said is that the electoral process should be credible, fair, and transparent enough such that there wouldn't be necessarily resort to judiciary. So that's what I think Professor Matthew and President Jonathan are actually talking about, looking at the bigger picture of the character of our election. And of course, Dr. Andrew Okongwu Bini also made a very fundamental point around the gains that we are making in the progress we have made as a democracy. 25 years is not a joke, and we have, considering our history, where we are coming from, 25 years is actually something that we can be celebratory about. But beyond longevity is also the need for us to improve the character of our election, of our democracy. Longevity, fine, but the character also has to be improved. We're making that progress, at different level. It may just be marginal, but there are still hopes, and it is that hope that that we should take into 2025. And looking at the election, the obstacle election that we have in 2025, and realizing that 2025 is just the very last functional year we're going to have before the phase of election will begin again in advance of 2027. And that's the point. So what are the things that we should focus on? I think we have underscored the question of attitude, very fundamental. But I'm not sure individuals can drive it on their own. It has to come from the leadership. And of course, leadership is not just going to drop from the sky, it will come from amongst us. I will have them emplaced. So what do we do as citizens? Remind them. Continue to make peaceful agitation. Remind them of, probably put their feet to fire, like we often like to say.
Sensitize them as well.
Sensitize them. Let them know that, sir, you are the one in charge. The box stops at your desk for now. And sometimes as human beings, there's a reason why we go to the mosque. I say this all the time. Why we go to the mosque on Fridays. There's also a reason why we go to the church on Sundays. Not that we have not heard about the Holy Quran before or the Holy Bible, but we go so that we can be reminded of the prescriptions of the great religions. Right? Otherwise, human beings, we are the tendency for us to forget, to be relaxed, to become lethargic is very high. And our leaders are also human beings too. So we just remind them of their mandate, to provide the appropriate leadership so that we can follow suit. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Adeniyi. So let me also bring our conversations to Dr. Okonzwa. Dr. Okonzwa, Jide talked about local government autonomy, and of course, for him, it was a landmark event that shaped 2024, that Supreme Court judgment on July 11. And by next year, local government, areas will start receiving, hopefully, will start receiving the allocation directly. In terms of, broader impact of governance, what does it mean?
What it should mean is that the local government councils, as elected, as expected by the Constitution, will serve their people at the grassroots level better. All the services they're supposed to render, especially as enshrined in our Constitution, will be rendered efficiently and probably promptly to the satisfaction of the constituents in the particular local government areas. There are still going to be issues, obviously. It is true that it is a good step forward, but legal analysts also believe that our Constitution has a lot of contradictions. Even as the Supreme Court has interpreted the Constitution to say let local government areas have a financial autonomy, but the state assemblies are also given powers by the same Constitution to control the same local government councils. So maybe we still have to fine-tune our practices, especially our constitutional stipulations, so that we'll have enough clarity. Because when you have contradiction, obviously, the guy with a stronger muscle will probably flex his way into suppressing the weaker party. So there are so many things that are calling for clarification in our Constitution. I would hope an assembly would be more active in that regard, in conjunction with the states, to make sure that the sphere of influence of local government councils are well defined. Then if you permit me to comment on the issue of judicial intervention and electoral processes, I will also situate it in our stage of development. At least in the first world country, in the year 2000, for instance, the Supreme Court had to interfere in their presidential election that was getting very ticklish. So for us as well, maybe we will get fewer and fewer. But the point is correct that a few individuals should not override the sovereignty of the people. It is going to be up to the citizens to make sure that our electoral processes are without controversies. And then we also have to develop the virtues of statesmanship, where a loser, as they say, will be magnanimous, and a winner will be magnanimous, and a loser will be gracious in defeat. And then the mandates will also be well utilized, so that however the victory came about, the people will benefit by it. So our democracy keeps evolving. I think we should keep the show on the road as we improve. Just like Professor Denny has said, more and more engagement, more and more elections, more and more correction of our imperfection, and so on. That is the way we are going to arrive at our destination.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Okonzua. I'm the one to go to Saudi Arabia now. Professor Mato, I know that I'll be well taken care of. So my question to you now would be what you expect INEC to do. Because, listening to you, you've talked about, it's not been right for the judiciary, just a few people, deciding who leads, a majority of people who have, gone out to cast their ballot, or if you like, vote in an election. But, if there's faith, like Professor Adeni was trying to talk about, INEC, in the way elections are conducted, the way the results are announced and all of that, I doubt if people will want to go to the judiciary. So what would you expect INEC to do differently, as we step into 2025 and look forward to, off-cycle election, Anambra, and of course, as we march towards 2027?
Well, thank you very much. I think before I attempt to answer the INEC question, it's important to make this very, very clear. Of the three arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, the two are political. The other one is non-political. The constitution says that you can be a president of Nigeria by simply attaining a certain age and then having a first level school certificate. It does not say you have to be a professor of political science. Same with the member of the Senate, the member of the National Assembly generally, the governor, the councillor, etc., etc. It's not the same thing for the judiciary. The judiciary is supposed to enjoy some measure of sanctity, and the sanctity of the judiciary must not be lost, and that's what we are talking about. So I am not simplifying the issue. In a situation where the judiciary has become a laughingstock, and people are accusing it of one infraction or the other, I think we need to be very careful. It's supposed to be an arm of government that is an in-between the two political arms of government. And so it should be taken very seriously. There should be no decision that the judiciary should take that would cast aspersions or doubt on its integrity by the members of the polity. That's precisely what I'm saying. And so it must be insulated from any politics, from any political, perhaps gerrymandering, as Gideon Joe would want to call it. It has to stand and to be dispensing justice the way it is, not simply defining and determining election results on the allegations of monetary inducement or something like that. That's what I'm talking about. Now, importantly, we have to change our attitudes. The Nigerian politician is still a very bad loser. No matter how transparent, no matter how pure the electoral processes are, once you are not declared the winner, you tend to cast aspersions and doubt on the entire electoral system. I do believe sincerely that Nigeria's electoral system is improving by the day. The major albatross here is the political class. Those who find themselves in political authority continuously try to undermine the sanctity of the electoral system in order for them to continue to enjoy, the bounties of office. And we really have to, work against that. I think INEC has to go extra mile, no matter what, just like, Professor said, Ephraim Apatawan said, that you cannot satisfy Nigerians no matter what you do once you're an electoral umpire. But INEC must continue to improve on the way and manner it conducts, national and local elections. As long as it does that, Nigerians also will continue. I do believe sincerely that INEC has been improving in terms of its capacity far more than the way the Nigerian politician has improved in terms of his or her attitude to accepting the will and the expectation or the wishes of the Nigerian electorate. So it is an attitudinal thing on one hand. On the other hand, it's also on the part of INEC to ensure that it continues to rectify, because during every election there will obviously be identified certain loopholes. The politician is always there with skills and schemes to undermine and to exploit any available loophole that exists in order to secure political victory. So INEC should continue to identify on this, blocking these leakages, and also for the Nigerian politicians to begin to subordinate himself or herself to the wishes and aspirations of the Nigerian people. So once you are elected, you have a time frame within which you are going to operate. If you do well, you are re-elected. If you don't do well, another person else is re-elected. So it's both sides. INEC should continue to perfect, should continue to improve, and on the other hand, the Nigerian politician should continue also to change his or her attitude, in accepting what the will of the electorate is.
All right. Professor Mato, thank you very much. And our last question will be taken from here in the studio. And quickly, in 60 seconds, so that Jide can also key in on this. One of the very interesting events, of course, in 2024 that Nigerians will remember was reinstating Nigeria We Hail the anthem. Yes. So, Professor Dini, can you now recite the national anthem?
Which of the
of course, Nigeria We Hail Thee. That's
I'll recite it when I grow up.
After all, today is his birthday. I agree with him.
Your birthday.
I agree.
So let's look at there was a purpose for that. Yeah. Yes. So let's look at the impact. And Nigerians beginning to.
I think it's supposed to be symbolic, right? Because national anthems are symbols of nationhood, supposed to galvanize us. And in the reckoning of present leaders, they think that it's more emotive, more galvanizing, gives us a sense of belonging than the previous one, So I think it's still early in the day, really, for us to measure the impact. Yeah, I think so. Because we are still struggling to even get back to it. Only the older generation are still able to recite it very well. The younger ones are struggling. Still struggling.
I can recite it. Well, not on air. I can recite it.
I can. Can you? Please. Yes. Can we do it? Like Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigeria are proud to serve our sovereign motherland. Bravo!
The NOA needs to.
Yes, thank you. Yes, of course we know.
I remember 1976, 77 in primary school. We were taught, and we got used to it.
Yes.
The first stanza, you always have to recite it every morning. Yes. But I think one thing we setting agenda for 2025 very quickly. I think we need to see possibility of engaging in a party. You mentioned something earlier on, apathy in the electoral process, and I've written so many times on what we need to improve political participation. Dr. Okonzwa talked about not having independent candidacy. We know that there is no special or early voting provision. Diaspora voting is not yet part of our process. The number of hours we have election is just 6 hours. In Ghana, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. 10 hours. So many things that we need to improve upon before we get to Anambra in November 2025. If we can facilitate this own administrative and legal reform that INEC has put forward 142 recommendations, I think it will help to improve our political process going forward.
All right. So, of course, we look forward to an improved political space and, yes, credible elections, of course. And we hope to see the people participate fully. Many thanks for being our guest. The very last edition of Good Morning Nigeria for 2024. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi. Yes, he's going to give us the venue and time at the end of this program.
Thank you.
Dean, School of Postgraduate Studies, Abuja University. Many thanks for being our guest. We do sincerely appreciate you for all the times that you were with us throughout the year. Jide Ojo, Public Affairs Analyst. Many thanks once again for joining us. We do appreciate you also, and of course. Professor Kabril Mato, Professor of Political Science, who is in faraway Saudi Arabia. Thank you so much. It looks like you get into 2025 before us. Tawari Okonzuwa, Public Affairs Analyst. Many thanks, Doctor, for your time and for all that you did for us in 2024. It's
all right. So we are going to end. Director, we're going to end singing happy birthday to the birthday boy. But we wish you a very prosperous new year. All of us here from the GMN crew, we thank you for being with us. We thank you for allowing us into your homes. And of course, hopefully we shall see you tomorrow, Yenre and I, by the grace of God. So let's say happy birthday to him and then we'll round up. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. God bless you. May the good.
Congratulations, sir.
Prof.